Hello everybody. Welcome to the Fiber Studio. Alright, how are we doing tonight? This is the first night of Tuesday night felting. I tried to pick a day where I didn't think I was going to be doing much of anything on most Tuesdays. It's been really cool to do Friday night felting, but I'm gone sometimes on Friday night, so that doesn't work out as well. So I'm hoping today I can see comments on my phone because I didn't set up my computer. But we're going to be starting a new project. I been looking every time I go into our one bathroom, it just looks really plain because I don't have anything up on the walls, because I never really decorated very much when we moved into the house. So but that bathroom does have like, I think it has like a camo type curtain, and then the shower curtain itself is like a little scene with like deer and bears and a few other things. So it's kind of like a, you know, that kind of outdoorsy hunting type theme, kind of a little bit. So I thought I'd go that route, maybe with some felted pieces, because I never felt anything for myself and I never hang anything up in my house. So that's what we're gonna do. At least try to do today. We're gonna start that today. So I printed off kind of an inspiration photo. It'll be backwards from what we'll see in a minute. But it's a little doe in the woods. And we're actually going to do some wet felting and then do some needle felting later on. So we'll get at least started with the wet felting today. So I pulled out this embroidery hoop. I thought it would make a nice frame. This one actually does have a size on it, and it's 10 inches. It's this old tag. I don't know how old this is, but whenever it was bought, it was $1.29 for this 10-inch hoop. So, I've got some wool picked out already, some greens and browns mostly. And we're going to try out my new little tripod. It's not really a tripod, but it holds my phone, and we're going to try it out. So, haven't done this. I don't think I've done this live before, moving it around, but we're going to see how it works. So let's go down to the felting surface. This is my kitchen here in my fiber studio behind me, where I've been dyeing lots of stuff today. Been dyeing and like crazy. There's some hanging over there. That's some purples, and there's some hanging over there, some more purples and green. And it was a dye day. So let's get to felting. Oh yeah, look, there's more right there. Ooh, pretty. Okay, so here is my felting surface. I'm going to get us situated, which might take a moment because this is new. We're hitting buttons while I'm going. Well, here you can see the whole surface, so that might be good. As long as I don't lean my face down into it, we might be alright. Still trying to figure out what exactly is the best way to set this up without tipping over everything. There, hopefully that doesn't shake too much once it's set. I never have the stand. It's actually one of those canvas lamp stands for my phone, but I never have the tripod or whatever sitting in the same table while I'm wet felting. Definitely sometimes not with needle felting, but just felting, you move the surface so much that it shakes the camera. So I don't usually like to do that, but alright, so here is my felting surface. So if you haven't seen me do wet felting before, my setup is I'll take a large, like a regular bath towel, and I'll lay that on my table first. And I always felt on a table that can get wet. So it's one of my, it's actually a rolling table, but it's a hard surface. not a wood table, just in case. And then I have a sheet of plastic, so that's the second layer of plastic. I actually use, I cut apart bags that I get back from the mill with my wool in it. They're great because they're big, and I like the clear plastic. And then I have a bamboo mat. I'm going to try to use this for felting first today. I'll either use a bamboo mat when I'm doing the felting process, like rolling, or I'll use a foam roller, but I'd rather use the bamboo mat. Okay, and then I got another layer of plastic. And then I have a piece of fabric mesh. So that I just washed, so I'm going to set that to the side because it's kind of wet and getting everything wet before we get started. So a couple other things I have is a bar of soap. This is actually goat milk soap. It's like unscented. I've loved to use this for my felting, and I've been hoarding the ones I have just for wet felting because I specifically like to use bar soap while I'm felting, and I'll show you why later. And then I have a bottle with some holes poked in the top of it to help wet down the wool once we get started. I have a whole nother thing of water sitting here because I'll probably run out of the water in the bottle. But I'm going to try to check on the comments. So if you're watching, comment on the video so I can see if I can see my comments today, hopefully. I'm hoping I can see comments. I'll probably check it every once in a while, but all right. So I've got my inspiration photo here. I printed off little doe in the woods, and this is the size I want my project to be. So this bamboo mat just should cover this. I want the project to be bigger than the hoop, this inside hoop specifically. So I'll kind of use that as my size guide, and I have to keep in mind that my project will shrink. So this bamboo mat is might be a little bit small, so I might have to break out the foam roller, but we'll see. Sometimes it works out all right. So I'm going to start by laying out my wool, as I like to call it, and design this. And I'm just using some wool roving, and I'm first going to make kind of the background color, which I'm actually going to do a little bit of just like a really dark brown, almost black first, because I want to kind of treat it like a painting where you start with the darker colors to build in your shadow first and then add lighter colors on top. So I'm just going to do a base color first, which is going to be this color right here. And I'm going to take pieces of my roving. A lot of times I'll pull it apart, but I think I'm just going to leave these pieces together and pull them apart a little bit. And that should be enough lengthwise this way. But I want a good gap to account for shrinkage. This first layer, I'm going to just do these longer pieces. And then I'll fill in some of these thinner spots next. And you don't want to go super thick, especially if you're trying to put something in an embroidery hoop. They don't like super thick pieces. So I'm going to try to do this a little bit thinner. So this fits here. I've put a couple in embroidery hoops before, but they're really hard to get in there because usually these wet felted like paintings are a little bit thicker. Okay. So I need a little bit extra on these ends because this is going to shrink too much otherwise. And I don't necessarily have to make it square because I am doing a circle. I'm going to fill in a little bit with these thin spots. You want to make sure when you're wet felting that the layers are even, so you have an even fabric all the way across once it's felted. So I'm trying to leave like 2 inches all the way around. I think that'll be a good amount of extra, at least just enough to make sure there's enough to go through the hoop. I don't see any comments. Oh, there's a comment. See, it's not letting me see this at all. I don't know why. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, there we go. I can see Lee. Is that how you say your name? Is that just Lee? You'll have to let me know. So usually I don't post these to YouTube, but it will be available on my Facebook page, so you can look back and watch it whenever you can. That is the beauty of these videos. I can set it to like delete in a few days, or I can just set to never delete and it'll just be available, so you can come back and watch it. And I'll try to post the link back like to the event, because I'm making an event for these, like a recurring event, and I will try to post the actual like link to this video in there as well, so it's easier to find. Look, I can see comments now. That's great. Okay, so I've got one layer here. This layer I actually did a little bit thicker than I normally do, but that's okay, because then I might just make one more layer and then start felting it. Usually I do 3 layers of wool, but I usually do thinner layers. So the next layer will be the actual like thing that I'm making. So I'm going to do some like tree trunks first. It honestly looks like there's a bunch of birch trees in this photo, just like their width and their color, because they're really light, which is cool. I like birch trees. I actually do have some here. All right, so I'm going to take some white and some brown. So I'm going to do some detail work. Actually, let's see. There's some green behind there, so before I get into that, I'm going to do some work on this upper portion here. I'm going to fill in some dark green in the top. This dark green is actually some Romney roving from 3 LNS Farms, which is another Michigan farm, from Miss Penny, who's been raising Romneys forever. So I'm going to do a little bit of that, and then, oh look, this is actually some Shetland from a friend of mine that is, oh, I can't remember exactly where she is, but she's like southeast of me. I'm in the thumb. I think southeast or south, one of the two. And she has Shetlands. So there's some green. That green is really dark, so it's hard to see on that other brownish color. But I wanted to lay some of the green in the background. And that way when I start adding trees, then I can add the next layer, because the next layer will be kind of in front of that. Okay, so I'm actually going to take some of this light brown color and the white and blend it a little bit together. So if you haven't seen me do that before, I just take the individual colors and lay them on top of each other, and then I'll pull them apart and it kind of blends them. Since these trees are in the background, I don't want them to be like the brightest thing in this piece. Maybe we'll put some more closer up. So blend them kind of with this light brown. It'll tone them back, and then I'm planning on doing some needle felted detail, especially like with the deer afterwards, so I can always add more detail later. So now I'm pulling off a piece of that color, and we're just going to make some tree trunks out here in the distance. Now if your wool is like too fluffy and want it to be like skinnier but still like thick so you don't see through it, you can twist it. So this is like the middle about of the project, and this is kind of where like the middle or kind of to the side is where my deer is going to be. So I want the background to kind of fill in this upper third. And this doesn't have to be exact because I'm going to fill in over top of this with some needle felting with some detailed like branches and detail some of the trees. But this kind of gives like a basic idea that there's trees back here, birch trees specifically. And say you want to add in like some regular trees, you could do that too. Okay, now I'm going to add just a little hint of some more greenery down here, mostly lighter color. And this is more dark green. I'm laying all these fibers going up and down. Usually when I'm wet felting, I want the layers to alternate directions. Okay, so we can start working in this foreground. And just checking. This is going to be plenty big enough. I'm probably going to have to switch to that foam roller to felt it a little bit as well. But, alright, so I'm going to start working on the deer a little bit. So it's definitely a different color, and I was struggling finding a good color to work with. But I might blend a little and see how that looks. don't have another nice size cardboard because I don't usually use them for blending. Usually I just use my hands. Okay, so we're gonna put our deer in. I kind of want to have her in the middle, but a little bit off. But I gotta make sure I keep her close to the middle, so when I put this in the hoop, that in case it doesn't fit exactly right, then I have some wiggle room. But we're gonna make her, and I'm just gonna do a basic shape because I'm gonna do a lot more detail while needle felting. The biggest thing right now is getting the proportions kind of right. And deer have a fairly long body and they have a long neck. I'm honestly going to be probably covering up most of this, so I'm not going to worry too much about like legs. I just want enough shape that we kind of know that it might be a deer. After I wet this down a little bit, I might refine the shape a bit. Okay. I think I'm going to kind of leave it like this for the moment. And I'm going to touch the head because that's too small and too much detail for this portion. Okay, now I need to fill in kind of the foreground area. So, but I'm just gonna lay in like some green because I'm gonna add a lot of detail like branches and plants and different things in the needle felting portion if I want to do that then. But I'm blending a little bit of this darker green and the lighter green together. If you do too much bright color, it's hard to go back to the darker. When we're doing big pieces like this, there's a lot of blending involved. If I don't have the right colors. But that's part of the process. And a lot of these, this time I want to spend here on these Tuesday nights is to work through my creative processes and do some new things that I want to do and set aside that time, because sometimes, you know, when I'm busy during the day, I just don't set aside the time to do like things like this. Okay, so I want to add a couple foreground trees here, kind of like there are in this photo. I want this to kind of be a larger tree, but I don't want it really to block the deer. And some of this will be cut off once I put it in the embroidery hoop, but that is perfectly fine. Just want a nice big old tree right here. If you watch Bob Ross, it's kind of like what he does sometimes. He'll just put all these details in and make this whole background and get close to the end, and all of a sudden he just drops in this tree, this giant tree in the foreground. Oh gosh. Now, I made this plenty big enough so I have lots of coverage around the edge, but when we wet it down, it's going to get even bigger. I forget sometimes how much difference that makes. Okay, so we added in a nice big tree. I'm going to throw a little bit of some lighter color in here in spots. I love to put a bunch of different browns together on the tree. Just gives it a lot of depth. And if you do this now with these colors, I've done it before where you just kind of mishmash the browns together, and then once it's wet felted, it looks a lot more like bark, and it's kind of cool. So over here, I'll drop in what'll be a birch tree, since we have those in the background. Okay, so that's kind of the details I wanted to add for right now. I'm going to grab all this extra wool I have sitting around and set that to the side. I should really put it in a bag or something, but it'll go... Oh, I got a bag. Come here. Just around my carter, I got a bag. So I know what colors I use for this project when I pull it out next. Okay, so time for fun. This is going to be large. Set my paper aside. Okay. I think I got like the basic colors down here. It's not exactly the same, but I take a lot of creative process when I work on this stuff. Okay, so I got extra towels, hand towels. I've got another bath towel hanging out here. I've got my fabric mesh. Now it's time to wet down. So I'm going to take my warm water now because it's been sitting for a little while and just start spraying down. I want to be careful and try to retain the shapes I made. Okay. Now placing this fabric mesh on here is going to keep everything together. And I'm going to start, I put a lot of water on it already, so I'm going to start by gently pressing down, and that'll like distribute that water through the fibers. But I want to be gentle because I don't want to distort what I've worked on so far. Okay, Lee asks, how do you decide to wet felt the background versus needle felting the whole project? Well, when I started wet felting, I procrastinated for so long and didn't wet felt because it just seemed I had a bad experience with it and I just didn't want to try it. But when I started doing it, it really does create some beautiful background pieces. So I really like doing that. And the other thing too is the like the wool fabric that I use is pricier for the like doing a needle felted background. So sometimes it's more economical to make your own background. Plus I can make it whatever color and whatever shape. And just the way the fibers blend together, it gives some really cool effects. Okay, I've added more water. So I'm going to distribute that water. I'm trying to keep all my shapes together. Now you want to make sure when you're wetting down the wool, a little bit too much water, that all of the wool fibers are wet all the way to the edges. And if you end up doing too much water, well, you can soak it up with some towels. I usually end up having water a little bit of everywhere, but that's okay. Okay, I don't usually recommend pulling up your wool mesh right now because it'll stick to the mesh, but want to make sure that things are kind of where they're supposed to be. Now it's really dark because we did use a darker background, and I hope that doesn't bleed through too much because I haven't used that dark background before. But I'm going to trust the process, and for some reason colors don't come out exactly like I want them to. I can always needle felt it differently. Okay, so look at how big this is now compared to my hoop, which is okay, because I still have the deer and some of my foreground, and this will shrink down about 40% usually. I can pull in my corners a little bit, or my edges, because they're a little thin. They're not as thick as the middle parts, so if I fold those in a little bit, this doesn't always work, but sometimes it'll grab and it will felt down nicer. Okay. Actually, everything kind of stayed pretty good. Now, I know I definitely have too much water here, but we'll deal with that as we felt. Okay. All right. An easy way to get rid of some water is to start from the middle and push it out. Now you can take an extra towel and soak up that water around the edges. I do like to do that. Or you can push it out so it goes on your bath towel, but that's why that towel's there underneath of everything in case you have some spillage. Sometimes I do get water on the floor as well, but that's okay. All right. So just FYI, I'm going to try to be done with this portion at least at right around 7. So we're not going to finish this all today, even the wet felting part. So I'm taking my bar soap, and this is why I like to use it, and I run it across the surface because it adds soap to this. It makes it slipperier and helps us felt. At least the method that I do. There's many different ways you can wet felt, but I don't necessarily have to use bar soap. It's just the method that I use. You can get your water really soapy if you want. Some people say use a little soap. I tend to use more soap because it helps me felt. So again, one of those kind of personal preferences type of things. All right, I've got some more runaway water. When you start to have water coming out of the project and going to the sides, that's when you want to soak it up. Okay, so now we're actually starting the felting. So I like to first start just by running my hands over the top of it to get an initial felt started. And to make sure my wool is staying somewhat where I want it to. Now you want to start it really gentle so you don't distort your picture too much. And then you can slowly increase agitation. I like to go in circles next. Okay, I got a lot of excess water. And this thing is big. And my roller still doesn't go all the way to the edges, which is fine because I can do this in kind of sections is how I get by this. I like to roll it usually when I felt. You can just felt completely by like using your hands, or there's these other tools with like knobs on them. But I will still roll it even if it doesn't fit. Now, yes, I can get a longer roller or make a longer roller, but this works well. Okay, so I don't want to roll up my bamboo mat. I do have that underneath. So what I'm going to do is take this. I'm going to put it right in the middle here first. And I'm going to take my mesh, the wool, and then my plastic. And roll this up together. And there comes more water. And then I'm going to take a hand towel. This will also soak up some of that water. I'm going to wrap this all up together. And then I'm going to start by rolling this. So when you start rolling, if you're rolling, usually set it down one spot and then you do like a quarter turn and then roll again. I usually count to like 25 rolls. Okay, and then I'll unroll and unroll the project. Now I'm going to scooch over to one side since I didn't get the whole thing. I'm going to roll it back up. And repeat. Okay, unroll. And unroll. And then I'm going to scooch it on to this side. And yes, the middle is going to get more felting than the rest of it. But we can focus on those edges as well later. Okay, so I'm going to unroll and I'm going to lift up my mesh and check everything out. So we're kind of starting to stick together. I have some pieces. There's a little bit lifting up down here. And like these fibers aren't sticking together. The top seems a lot better, but this bottom here wants to stick up. So, and it doesn't have very much soap in it. So I'm going to cover this again and add a little bit more soap to this area. Okay, I want to make sure the whole thing's nice and slippery and soapy here. Now, right down here and right here was having most of the issue, so I'm going to focus on hand felting this little area for a few moments. So adding pressure and movement is what helps felt when you're wet felting. Okay. Now everything's looking more like a flat piece here, which I like. And see, when you get to the part where these fibers are sticking to each other and not like pulling up super easily, you can take that mesh off and do some felting right on that wool with your hand so you know exactly where you're felting. Now this is like super helpful when you get to this point, just because you can actually physically see what those fibers are doing. And focus on little areas if you want to. Now I also find that like this tree and this other tree here, these pieces, these thicker pieces that we lay on the top, they don't like to felt as much because you laid a thick piece of roving down on top of thin pieces, and so it doesn't like to stick to the thin pieces underneath. So you might have to spend some more time specifically in that spot working on like the tree. Okay. Going to soak up a little bit more of this soap around the edges and this water. Okay. Now I want to put this mesh back on. I'm going to rinse it just a little bit. Okay, so I used my regular foam roller. I'm actually going to use the bamboo mat a little bit. So I just folded that up so I can lay out my bamboo mat. So I really like the way this felts. Okay, we are off center. All right, so we were facing, everything's sticking together. We were facing this way, now it's sideways, but we want to felt it in all directions. So I guess if I can find which layer of plastic I'm on. Felting bigger pieces is harder, for sure. I usually do smaller pieces for this reason, but I wanted to do a bigger piece. At least the method I use, it's easier to do smaller pieces, but alright. So I got my bamboo mat underneath here. I know it's hard to see, but it's under here. And I'm going to roll this up with the bamboo mat. Alright, and we're at 7 o'clock, so I'm going to do a little bit more felting, and then I'm going to quit for the night because I'm tired, and it's about time for dinner as well. So, oh, I gotta take this off. You want to wrap up, if you're using a bamboo mat, wrap it as tight as you can. And then you kind of do the same thing and roll it. But the mat likes to come unrolled, which is fine. You can just re-roll it. but you want to roll it as tight as possible. Okay, so I unrolled and I'm moving it over like I did with the foam roller. And I'm going to roll it back up. And unroll. Check on the project. I'm actually going to flip it. Yes, look, it's sticking together enough that you can pick it up. It's actually starting to shrink down a bit as well. You see these ripples in here? That means felting is happening and it's actually shrinking. So I'll roll again. Lots and lots of rolling. Rolling and re-rolling and re-rolling again. Alright, we're really starting to stick together. I can run my hand over this and the fibers don't really move. There's a couple spots, like right here, the fibers want to come apart, but most of it, if you pull on it, is sticking together fairly good. And I don't blame that edge piece because it is on the edge and it doesn't get much attention while we're felting. But I can give it some attention itself. Most likely this piece will be cut off anyways, but okay, so I'm at a stage where I can take a little break because it's getting late for us, but Mary Ann, do you ever wrap a towel around your bamboo bundle to help keep it together? I don't normally, like you would with the foam roller. We're gonna try it just because you said something. I like the way the bamboo, that I can feel it while I'm rolling. I always have the wrap the foam roller in a towel. I don't know why it wouldn't be the same for the bamboo mat. And yes, it's going to stay together much better. I probably always just like the feeling of that bamboo mat under my hands. And it's like, ooh, this feels nice. Oh yeah. Now that really did a great job. Thanks for the idea. I honestly have no idea why I haven't done that before, because that would make sense of how I've done with the regular roller. That really did a nice job. I'm going to scooch it over and grab this edge that I didn't grip, but I didn't get in there before. See, sometimes it takes somebody watching you to give you a great idea. Something so little. But the bamboo mat, I've used that. I started using that this year, not super long ago, so it hasn't been something I've been using a lot. Look at that. Okay, couple more rolls. I'm definitely pushing my limits on time. I can smell the food cooking. But I know it's not done yet, so. Okay, I'm going to flip it. Oop, and look, we're still well within the parameters of our hoop. We'll flip her over. I'm going to give it one last roll and rinse it out and let it dry for the night. There we go. All right, pinch test time. I can pinch it all over, and it feels like a piece of fabric and not individual fibers. Usually I take this and then we'll full it, which is almost the same process usually, but instead I just use the mat and this background. But this bamboo mat does a good job of fulling while we're felting, because it really does shrink it down quite a bit. So I'm just going to rinse this and lay this out flat to dry. And then next Tuesday, we will hopefully get together again and do this again and work on some needle felting. I've got lambing starting any day now, so that'll be fun. But for now, that's our Tuesday night felting. So thanks for joining me, and we'll hope to see you next time. Until then, happy felting.